Hello, and welcome to the We Win podcast powered by Accelerate Her Africa. I hope you're all doing very well today. I am your host, Lolita Ejiofor, and it's such a pleasure to welcome our guest, Florina Minzat. She's a visionary entrepreneur who's tackling the climate emergency with innovative technology that puts comfort and sustainability hand in hand. As co-founder of EcothermiQ, she's developing groundbreaking, low-embodied carbon technology that's simple to install and yet sophisticated in impact, using energy-efficient passive principles to create indoor thermal comfort while protecting our planet's future. What makes her story so compelling isn't just the technology she's building, but her commitment to proving that well-being and environmental protection aren't competing priorities. They're complementary solutions for our world's most pressing challenges. Please join me in welcoming our climate innovation pioneer, Florina. So before we dive into your work in climate tech, I want to start with a fascinating part of your story that many might not know. You're a multi-time national fencing champion. What did the intense discipline and mental toughness of competing at that level teach you about handling pressure?
Yes. Oh, that is a great question. And thank you for asking me about it, because as you said, yes, a lot of people don't know that about me. When I think about it, I think the most important thing, it was about, and of course, I see things differently now looking back, because I was 10 when I started.
Wow.
And at 20, I moved to London. So by the time I was 20, half of my life was filled with fencing, But the way I see it now is that it really taught me to surrender to the magic of the game. When you're passionate about something and you put so much work into it, and the discipline and the resilience that comes with it, it just has a way of teaching you to surrender to the magic of the game, to actually being present in your body and trusting yourself and letting go of the external factors and noise, because there are so many external things that can just simply distract you. And the moment you can get in the zone and be really, really focused, oh my God, I miss those times. Like those moments it's very difficult to explain them, because you just feel them, you live them, they make you feel alive in a way that a lot of times I feel like if you haven't been a professional athlete, it's very difficult to understand. But I think that's kind of like the most important thing that I take, because pressure is something that you cannot turn off. It's always going to be there. What you can do is always come back to you, to how you feel, to how you manage your emotions, and also a really good alignment between your mind and your body, because sometimes your body might tell you like, I cannot breathe anymore. I'm going to faint here if I do one more thing. But if you can find that little thought in your head that tells you, that little voice that tells you, no, you have this under control. You can actually do this. You can do this. Yeah. Trust the process. So yes, I think that would be the most important thing that I take from fencing.
Yeah, there's so much alignment between fencing and real life. So that brings me on to my second question. Fencing is often described as a physical chess. How does the strategy of a fencing match knowing when to defend and when to attack and how to read an opponent shape the way you approach challenges in business and entrepreneurship today?
Yes, that is again a very great question. And I would also like to add that chess can be a very slow sport where you can actually take your time. But there's also, I'm not a chess player, but I have chess players in my family actually. And I know there's also the type of chess where you have the timer. And I think that's where the link comes in, because fencing is a very fast sport. And I think what I take from my experience with fencing into my business right now is just don't jump to conclusions, basically. Just because you see something in a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's how it looks to others, you know? Perspective is so important. And when you're playing the game, basically, you cannot see yourself. It's impossible. You know what you're doing, but you cannot see certain things. It's always easier to see it from the outside. So the importance of having a great support system, and in fencing, it was also a coach, a team, you know, is extremely important, because having people that are outside of you, but seeing what you're doing gives you a lot of insight into how to improve your technique, like what blind spots you might have, you know? And I think that's super important in order to improve and learn and become really good at what you're passionate about. And I think, yes, you're the one playing the game, you're the one fighting, but in reality, none of us is like alone, really, you know? When you win, there's like an army behind of you, of people who cheer you up, who support you. And I think that's something that I learned from fencing. And I know that even now in my business, I am building my company, but I wouldn't be able to do it without the support of other people behind me, mentors, coaches, friends, and even people like you know. It's extremely important. And I also think that another thing that I think it's important to mention here, it's also about, if you find out that something doesn't work, don't try to figure out, don't get stuck in your head. Don't try to figure out, oh, why doesn't it work? Don't focus on like why it doesn't work. Just try a different way. If you do something and it doesn't work, don't just, you know, be stubborn and try to figure out, but why doesn't it work? No, try it a different way. Yeah. Simple as that. And when you find something that works, stick to it. Right. It might be boring for a while because you're like, oh my God, it works, but like no, if it works, stick to it. And only take risks when you have a really great advantage over your competition or your opponents, or you have to be very discerning between when you can play it safe and when it's okay to take a risk. Yeah. Because sometimes there are situations where even if you want to take a risk, you know the price that you must pay if you take that risk. And a lot of times, if you want to take a risk, I think you have, as I said before, you have to be really sure that you have a great advantage over your competition, your opponent, or they have a really great advantage over you, and you're kind of like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it because I have nothing to lose. You know, I'm gonna take a risk here. But when you're in situations where things are very tight, just play it safe, stick to what works, and don't try to be impulsive, basically, which is something that we can be at times because human beings, right? Yeah, I think these are extremely valuable lessons. I'm truly grateful for them, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I totally align with you when you talk about having that support, having that team around you to see your blind spots before you make moves and give you advice, even in the business world today. So that's a great one. You've made some incredible, bold pivots, most notably from a successful career in the aviation industry to now co-founding a climate tech company. Looking back at the time studying aeronautical engineering and working in the aviation industry, what was the most important lesson you learned about managing complex, high-stakes systems?
I actually really like that question because it's something that reminds me of why I am here today, actually. And I think a lot of complex things can be simplified, but that requires change. And I think most people, myself included at times, are very resistant to change. But change is the only constant in life, and the only way we can learn and grow and expand and transform ourselves and, the world we live in. And I think many tend to associate complex things with being somehow superior for some reason, and simple things tend to be like easy or inferior. And I actually believe that at some point as well. But after working in aviation, which, as you said, yes, it's a pretty complex industry, I realized that a lot of things could have been simplified. And I kept wondering, but why? Why are people so resistant to embracing change, Because I feel like change is hard in the beginning, but it gives you an easier journey after you make that decision, And I think I'm at a point in my life where I would rather make a hard choice in the moment and then have an easier journey than make an easy choice in the moment and have a very difficult, hard journey. And again, maybe it's something that I took with me from my fencing experience, but I want to give up on this idea that things have to be hard and complex and you have to work hard. I'm at a point in my life where it's just, no, I want to make things as simple and as easy as possible so we can actually live our lives and not just survive. And I want all of us to actually thrive, and if things are constantly complex and hard, how are we going to thrive?
Absolutely. I agree with you. It's important that we look at change as a way to thrive. So what was the moment or insight that prompted you to pursue a master's in smart buildings and pivot your entire career towards the climate emergency? Was it a gradual realization or a specific aha moment?
Okay. So the reality is that it was a bit of both. I've always wanted to do a master's degree, and the reason why I didn't do it straight after I graduated from my bachelor in aeronautical engineering was because I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay within the aviation industry. And I was like, let me just go out there, see how it is. And then when I want to do a master, I'll come back and I'll make that decision based on the experience that I'm gaining from working in the industry. And I was made redundant just before the pandemic hit, literally. And I think that was the time when I realized how fragile the aviation industry is. I think a lot of industries were affected at the time, and there were so many people being made redundant, so many layoffs. But I think aviation was hit like the hardest. And I think I felt at the time that this is not a secure industry for me long term, because it's very fragile and prone to all these little disruptions. Right. And it's funny because I actually took another aviation role at the end of 2020 when in my head I was kind of like, no, I'm not going back to aviation because I am not sure what's going to happen. And I was very keen on building a career. So when you want to build a career and an industry is just very, very unstable, you're kind of like, how can I do this? Right. And somehow the opportunity found me. And I was like, okay, let's just give it another try, you know? But the truth is that after a couple of months of going back into the aviation industry, I felt very unfulfilled. I just didn't feel like my work was rewarding. I was just seeking my life purpose. And it was weird because I remember talking to my therapist and I was telling her, I am truly grateful that I have a job after not having one for almost a year, you know, and finally getting paid, you know, and having this support system that you get from your coworkers. But I was telling her, I'm clueless of what I'm doing. Like, I don't feel fulfilled. I'm grateful, but at the same time, I'm just questioning every day. What am I doing with my life? It's just pointless, you know? I wanted something and I have it, but now I'm realizing it's not what I actually really truly want. And I think it took me 2 weeks to actually decide to do a master. I've always wanted to do a master degree. And I think at some point, I think it was 4 months after I had this job, I started looking online and I was like, no. I am going back to studying because I need a fresh new start. And I don't know what it is going to look like, but I'm going to make it happen.
Wow, Florina, you will not be the first guest to tell me that they made a pivotal choice to leave an opportunity to find their purpose. So I'm not surprised that you got restless after going back into the aviation industry and then deciding to leave to actually find that purpose. So making a change like that, leaving a field you're trained for, can be incredibly daunting. What was the biggest fear you had to overcome when you decided to leave the world of aviation behind and essentially start again in a new field?
That's actually interesting because when I trust myself to make a change, to make a decision, and I've always done this, and people are like, oh, you're impulsive, but I actually sit with things for a very long time. And then when I act, people start thinking, oh, you're impulsive, but I actually made all the plans and all the moves, all the chess moves in my brain. And I was not scared at the time. I had no fear because I was excited about having a fresh new start, having a fresh new beginning. And I felt cold to it. It was a bit like I knew I wanted to do something. And then the universe just started like, you know, giving me little signs and I was just following them. I wasn't questioning them. And based on my life experience, I know that endings are new beginnings. And instead of dwelling on the ending, I choose to get excited about the unknown and what's about to come. And in a very weird way, I remember that when I applied for my master, I wasn't sure I was going to be accepted. I told you I did everything in like 2 weeks. I was just like insane. And when I received my confirmation and my acceptance letter, I had also lost my previous job in aviation, the one I didn't like. I was made redundant from that one as well. That's kind of like that's like my trademark. But I managed to get another job in a startup airline. And I worked in aviation while studying. And it was amazing because one thing about me, I like to do multiple things at the same time. So I was still working in aviation while studying my master in smart buildings and digital engineering at UCL. And yes, I was working remotely, which was very flexible for me. And I think that also helped me to make everything happen because I needed the money. And I think the fear kicked in only after I graduated, because after I graduated, I had also ended my contract with this startup airline. That's when the fear started like kicking in because I was just like, oh my God, I only worked in aviation and now I want a job in a different industry, but I don't want an entry level job because I have so much experience And I think that's when the fear started kicking in. I remember those times. It was very challenging. It was exhausting. But I loved both, you know? And I think I was also grateful that my last role in aviation was in a startup, and it sort of introduced me to this world of entrepreneurship and startups. And it showed me that if you really want something, you just have to give it a try. You just have to do it, you know, like nothing actually stops you. So I think everything worked out in the end perfectly. So I'm actually really, really grateful that I did all of that.
I just love how you said you trust yourself, you know, and you made these bold, courageous decisions to leave and start a master's. And even though you went back into aviation, you still found your way into that field of startup. So great on you. Now you're part of the Carbon 13, the venture builder for the climate emergency. How did that experience give you the framework and confidence to take the leap into co-founding your own company, EcothermiQ?
Yes. Well, we graduated from Carbon 13 in January officially.
Congratulations.
And I think to give a bit of a background here, I think at the time when, as I said, after I graduated, I started looking for jobs in the industry, in the built environment, in sustainable buildings. And for some reason, after dozens of interviews and hundreds of applications, nothing was sticking, nothing was working out. And I spontaneously decided to apply to an accelerator. So I applied to Carbon 13 Accelerator. Because when you apply to so many things and nothing works out, you're at that point where it's something that I mentioned earlier. It's about taking a risk. And I was like, I have nothing to lose at this point. It's like, I don't have a job. So I might as well give it a try. And I remember that I wasn't attached to any outcomes. I was just like, yeah, whatever. The application process was pretty strict and tough. There were hundreds of people that were interviewed and only 80 that were selected for the Berlin cohort, because they have one in Cambridge as well. And somehow, after a couple of interviews and stuff, I was selected. And I was like, oh my God, this was easy. How did I end up here? I wouldn't say I wasn't capable. I didn't manage to get a normal job. And then all of a sudden, I'm here with 80 brilliant people from all over the world trying to build climate tech ventures. You know, I was like, wow. But one thing that I've learned about myself, because I did a lot of healing and I worked with myself a lot, I convinced my brain that you're here because you're supposed to be here.
Right.
So own it and do not think for a second that you're a mistake or like you don't belong here. Right. Do not let that imposter syndrome kick in, basically. I kept telling myself, just you're here because you're supposed to be here. And yes, I kept showing up as my most authentic self. And I think it was the first time in my life where I really showed myself authentically in a career environment, which before felt a bit uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. And I knew I wanted to succeed. So succeeding in that context meant being able to find someone you can team up with. But I wasn't obsessed about it, you know? I was being very present, and I was being very discerning, very observant, and I was just enjoying the experience, because I told myself I'm supposed to be here for a reason. I don't know what that reason is right now. Maybe I'll end up meeting someone who works somewhere, and in my head, there were so many possibilities that I didn't want to attach myself to anything. So I was very, very open. Again, I was surrendering to the experience, but of course, the discipline, the motivation, the consistency of showing up and doing what was required to get done. And I was curious, And I think that is very, very important, because a lot of people, they just stop being curious, And I think for me, that was very important, because I stopped hiding. I was showing myself. I was putting myself out there. And I I admitted when I didn't know things, and when I knew things, I owned them. And it was a very, very, very nice experience because it taught me. And again, I'm going back to that thing I was saying about making a choice that feels hard in the moment, because it felt hard in the moment to do this, to take on this experience. But the process actually was very flowy. It went like I was going with the flow, you know? It felt effortless in a way because I was aligned with it. So I think that's my...
Florina going with the flow. I absolutely love your resilient spirit. Despite all the failures you were getting, all your applications that were just not happening for you, you still went for it. You still said, I'm going to apply for this accelerator, and you did it. It's really a great example of how you don't give up on your dream and your vision. So let's just go back to that fencing analogy you gave us earlier. Has there been a moment so far in your entrepreneurial journey that felt like a really tough match? A time you were on the defensive and had to find a whole new strategy to get back in the fight?
Many. Many times. Yes. It's something that you just get used to it. It sounds difficult when I say, many, and you just have to get used to it. But the truth is that you actually end up getting used to it, and you don't get that sort of like panic moment anymore. You're actually calm and grounded when challenges come your way. But I think most of these challenges, I would say, were and still are linked to the financial side of things. Right. I think the biggest and the most difficult moment that I had to deal with in this past 18 months, I would say, and as I said, there were many moments, but if I were to choose one, it was the moment when Carbon 13 pulled back in April. So we pitched in September. They confirmed that they were gonna invest in us in October last year. And after waiting for like 6 months, we just had a call with them and they just pulled back. And that hit me really hard, if I'm being honest, because they were meant to be our first investor and also to support us and guide us moving forward. That's when fear, because even though I say that, I am aware of my own fears as well. I just don't allow them and I don't let them take control over me, but right. I have to acknowledge them. And that was a moment when I had to acknowledge my fear because it was very real. I was supposed to get paid in April, my first salary. And then all of a sudden, now that I'm not just getting paid, but I don't know when the heck am I going to get paid? And it was very, very, very tough. I was crying a lot. I think for like almost 2 weeks, I was just a mess. And then I started receiving support from people suddenly, actually, unexpectedly. And it was basically like the universe, again, God was just, do not give up. Because in my head, I was just literally at a point where I was like, I don't want to quit, but I need money. I need to survive. How am I going to make it work? And then people just started sending me opportunities. And in order to keep myself distracted, because that's another thing I learned from fencing, when your emotions are super intense, you acknowledge them, but you have to keep yourself busy. You have to keep your mind busy, because if you just lay on your bed for days and don't talk to anyone and just cry, things are not going to get any better. And that's when I was like, you know what? Let me just try again in a different way. And I started focusing more on working on the type of entrepreneur I wanted to become. Right. And that's when a lot of the Female Founders Rise opportunity came in. That's when I was invited to go to Greece with a bunch of amazing female entrepreneurs in climate, learning to do podcasts and connecting and sharing stories. And I think that's when I also started building a great support system as well. And that's why I'm grateful that even though the experience that happened with Carbon 13 was awful, it forced me to actually go out there and connect with people. Yeah. And that's when I realized that, wait, hold on. I'm not alone in this. There are so many people who actually believe in me and they've just met me. So I must believe in myself again. What carbon 13 did had nothing to do with me. And I took my power back.
Awesome.
And here I am, grateful for that experience as well.
Awesome. I love that story. It must have been really challenging and trying for you, but it was a way of reinforcing that need to build a new network, and you did it. And you also reinforced your belief in yourself and your capabilities and what you can do and what you can achieve. So I love that story. So let's talk about the complex system you're focused on now. Why are buildings such a critical leverage point for carbon reduction? And what led you to focus specifically on the problem of indoor thermal comfort?
I think the simple answer is because buildings are where climate change meets our daily lives and daily routines. Globally, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but buildings are responsible for almost 40% of the energy-related carbon emissions, which is a lot globally. And that is related, obviously, mainly to heating, cooling, and ventilation, and all the power that goes into this massive buildings that we live in. For some reason, the conversation lately is about energy supply, and we talk a lot about renewable energy and the grid. But I feel my own point of view is that we don't talk enough about how can we actually make buildings more performant? How can we improve their performance? How can we actually reduce the energy consumption of buildings as opposed to trying to supply the same amount of energy, but in a different way? Because again, I'm trying to simplify things here. So with my solution, and I was just, okay, but we can actually improve buildings in a way that leads to them consuming less energy and also less CO2 emissions, right? And I think with COVID, people became aware of the importance of having fresh air and indoor air quality, which is something that maybe before people didn't know or weren't as aware as we started. Like, we were forced to be aware during that time, unfortunately. And you go to different climates and you see that some people use air conditioners for like, I don't know how many hours, how many days. And for some reason, we still normalize thermal discomfort, because just blasting your AC for the whole day, it doesn't make you feel comfortable. You just think that you're comfortable because, you see the temperature is right. But are you actually comfortable? Because to be honest, I don't have my AC on right now because I am not really comfortable with it while I work. And up to 50% of the energy demand in a building goes into heating and cooling, which is, again, a lot. And I personally feel like we're wasting energy and we're wasting money because we just don't know how to interact with our buildings in simple terms. And for me, this is also personal, but I think it's something that impacts everyone, and solutions exist out there, and we can make buildings more sustainable while also improving the quality of our lives. And that's why I'm focused on this, because I believe that if we can get this indoor comfort right, and when I say right, I mean in a natural, passive way, that's also efficient and scalable, I think we don't just make a dent in the emissions, I think we can actually make a huge leap. And I, as a positive, optimistic person, yes, you have to stay positive. I believe that can actually happen, and it's why I'm here building this.
I 100% agree with you. Indoor comfort is not just a European problem or a cold country problem. It's a problem in hot countries as well. So it'll be interesting how you're able to develop the solution even in the environment where you are. So we've mentioned EcothermiQ a few times now, your company, and we know it provides innovative, simple to install, low-embodied carbon technology. In simple terms, how does your solution work, and what makes it a better approach than what currently exists?
EcothermiQ is on a mission to prove that indoor thermal comfort doesn't have to cost the earth, nor your pockets. And we deeply believe in that. And what we're really tackling is the fact that our buildings weren't designed for this new climate reality that we're all facing everywhere, globally. But our buildings urgently need to adapt to it because traditional HVAC solutions, such as air conditioning units and gas boilers, are very energy hungry, expensive to run, and they also come with a massive carbon footprint. And our technology is designed to do the exact opposite, believe it or not. It is actually possible. Our system is passive, which means that it can naturally ventilate, heat, and cool your indoor environment. It is low energy because it runs entirely on solar energy. And it has this really cool superpower that enables it to store thermal energy, which means that it can absorb and release heat, and therefore it works day and night throughout the whole year. Think of it as a smart pathway for air to flow through a building without the need for heavy machinery or complicated installations. And that air carries energy, which means that it can release that energy into your indoor environment. And that energy is heat.
Right.
It can be 20 degrees or 30 degrees or 25 degrees, depending on climate and also other factors, which I'm not going to get into because I don't want to get too technical. But I hope that this is an easier way for people to understand it. And yes, it's easy to install. It's basically installed on the outside facade of the building. And it can save up to 4 tons of CO2 emissions over its lifespan. And what makes it better than what currently exists is that instead of fighting against nature with compressors and refrigerants, we're basically co-creating with nature. We reduce the demand for mechanical heating, cooling, and ventilation. We cut operational costs related to it. And in the end, we desire to make buildings healthier and more comfortable to live and work in. And because it's a simple and scalable technology, it can be rolled out in homes, in schools, offices, hospitals, because it just gives people instant comfort without the emissions, the carbon emissions associated with that comfort. So in short, we're creating a new way to heat, cool, and ventilate buildings that's cleaner, cheaper, and cares for our planet.
Absolutely. I love the fact that it's 4 times less carbon emission than our traditional heating and cooling systems. And with zero energy supplied from the grid, it's cost efficient. So on a personal level, what does a comfortable, healthy indoor space mean to you? How does it impact your own well-being and productivity?
I love that question, actually, because I think for me, a comfortable and healthy indoor space is one where my body, but also my mind, can focus and relax without distractions. And I feel it instantly, if the air is too hot, if I don't have fresh air, actually, I don't know how people don't ventilate their indoor spaces, if I'm being honest. Because yes, breathing stale air, I feel it instantly, like my brain just cannot function. My energy levels are dropping. I get irritable, I just don't feel like myself. And also my creativity and my productivity is just drops. I'm just like, okay, I cannot function right now. I cannot function. This is what indoor thermal comfort means to me, is that when you're indoor space, which means the temperature, air quality, humidity, even natural light, it's when all of these things are in harmony and your nervous system can just relax and exhale, okay, this feels good. I'm ready to do whatever I'm about to start right now, and I think for me, it makes me work better. It makes me feel better. It also makes me be more connected to my body as well. It's not just comfort. It's really about your health and your mood, which is so much more than just comfort. And a lot of people have, for example, mold in their homes, and they don't understand the impact that it has on your health as well,
right.
Because long-term breathing that air, it's very dangerous. And I think this is what I'm trying to do, to spread this awareness of how our indoor environments actually affect us, because I think there's not a lot of awareness around it. And a lot of people, again, we mentioned it before, we're just so used to just do things because this is how everyone does them, right? But we can actually do them in a better way. And I think indoor comfort shouldn't be a luxury, literally. I think it should be the standard because we spend so much time indoors, right? Like, why should it be considered a luxury? I don't get it, because who doesn't like comfort again, right? And yes, I think we often just accept this status quo without questioning it. And I think I'm here to actually questioning it. I believe that we can design, spaces that give us energy, instead of taking it away from us. And that is the future I want to build towards. Because when our spaces, our buildings comfort us and take care of us, we can also take care of the world, Yeah. We can actually be better for each other and for the world. And as I said before, I think I love people and I love the planet. And I think buildings for me are this bridge between these two worlds, which is, I feel really grateful that I have found my purpose.
That's awesome. I love the world you're aiming to build, and you will get there. I think a lot of people are used to, unhealthy indoor spaces because they don't know any better. And I think once there's awareness that your indoor space can be healthy through even ventilation, they will tend to lean towards better choices. But for now, we're just hoping that you will be able to drive this initiative and as you are living your purpose. So I'm curious, what is your ideal healthy indoor space?
I think for me, it's a combination of factors. I'm also neurodivergent, so I am a bit more sensitive to certain things than others, I guess. And it's something I've learned to appreciate, because having the right space to work, and especially now that I'm building this company, it is so extremely important. And it's natural light is extremely important to me. I love natural lighting, and having just the right temperature. I know what my right indoor temperature is because I've tried and tested it during the summer, during the winter. So I know when my body is relaxed, what temperature is best for me. And also, as I said before, it's ventilation. I think ventilation, if I were to choose one thing for everyone in order to ensure that their indoor environment works for them and not against them, it would be just please ventilate your space properly, because it is so important to have fresh air, especially if you work from home or in an office where, you're not going out every half an hour, right? I mean, I wish I could have so many breaks during a day. And sometimes, yes, I do have one or two, but having fresh air is literally, and also night ventilation during the summer. I literally keep my windows open during the night, and I love just having that sort of like fresh breeze during the nighttime. It actually helps us sleep better as well, which people don't realize, that when you sleep, it's also super important to have fresh air throughout the whole night, because it actually helps your brain rest better as well. And yes, I think for me, rest is kind of like my top priority in life right now. No matter what happens, I have to rest properly, and I have to ensure that my environment when I sleep is working for me, because I need to bring my best the next day. So I need to rest properly every night, no matter what. So yeah.
Yes, we all need that rest. I think your recommendations are well founded. So finally, looking forward, what is your vision for the future of smart, sustainable buildings? If EcothermiQ is wildly successful, how will our homes and offices feel different in, say, 10 to 20 years' time?
Yeah, this is when we speak about 10, 20 years, for me, it's always like, oh my God, because someone recently just said that in startups, you feel like you're counting years in like dog years. Basically, what happens in 1 year is pretty much like what happens in like 7 years for normal companies, for normal people. But if I want to, and I like to dream and to be positive and stay optimistic about the future, I think I want EcothermiQ to redefine indoor thermal comfort and to make our buildings work in a way. And it's not even really work, because our buildings are just here to protect us, and to provide us with comfort, really. This is what I believe. And I think in 10, 20 years, I want to see this sort of shift in behavior and mentality when it comes to comfort. And I want EcothermiQ to be a technology and a device that is passive, that is low carbon, and that works with nature, because as I said before, we use solar radiation. This is what we use. And I think we can use nature, because I genuinely deeply believe that this planet gives us everything that we need. And we just have to figure out a smart way, a better way, I would say, actually, of working with our nature and not against it. And I would like to say that maybe in like 10 years and even 20 years, we will have devices such as EcothermiQ in every home out there. And people will see the benefits of having constant indoor thermal comfort, which will improve the quality of their lives and our health and our well-being. And I would like to also prove that we can actually, because by 2050, we're supposed to reach the net zero targets. And a lot of people, are skeptical about it. And that's in like 25 years, right? I like to believe that we can get there, that we can actually generate all the energy that the buildings are using in a sustainable way, and that we can use renewable energy in most buildings. And yes, I would like to close my eyes and be like, okay, we actually contributed towards this big milestone and this big achievement for the society, for the world. We contributed to actually being part of this net zero transition. And I think my vision to create smart and sustainable buildings that are comfortable and healthy is a simple vision. And I think it's also very real to me now. It's something that I believe with my heart and my soul.
Okay. Thank you so much, Florina. I mean, I thoroughly believe with your mindset, in terms of how you want to make an impact on the environment, meeting our net zero targets will be possible. And I'm trusting in you and your network of people to help to come up with these solutions with EcothermiQ. I thoroughly believe that. So Florina, I just want to say a huge thank you for being our guest today. The insights you've shared are so eye-opening, and I'm hoping that people have paid attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. To be honest, it's been a pleasure for me as well, and I am truly grateful for the opportunity and for having met you. And yes, I think the more I share, the more we share. This is how we make it happen. I love what you're doing, and I'm also inspired by your work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, I thought that was a great session. I don't know about you, but just listening to Florina talking about healthy indoor spaces, it just tells us that we need to let nature into our homes. It just balances things out a bit. It also gives us a sense of comfort. Indoor thermal comfort can be done without making a mess of the environment if EcothermiQ has anything to do with it. Let's also remember the resilience, the self-belief, and not giving up were the key drivers of Florina's journey and passion and purpose that she still shows till today. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for listening in today. And I do hope that you will pay a little bit more attention to your environment and do your own little bit. Open up those windows, let the fresh air come inside and breathe. Thank you all. Take care and God bless.